The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of the S2EP Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.
Welcome back. Hello. Welcome back to Culture and Sanity. This is episode number 5 of the podcast. So welcome back. Thanks for listening now or later. So some things we have on the docket for today are Elizabeth Moss and her beliefs, I guess. Joaquin Phoenix made some comments in reference to a movie that is going to be coming out soon about Mary Magdalene and Jesus. There's something we want to talk about in terms of a cosplayer and some choices they made. Charlize Theron has some parenting input. And then there's a topic of Roman Polanski that comes up. So I should start saying from now on, here's what is planned to be talked. Here's what our plan is. We may or may not get to all these things due to the nature of conversations, but we'll do our best. That's what's on our docket. And then, provided we get a phone in, we have some trivia today that is resurrection themed. Obviously, it's Easter tomorrow, so that is why the theme this week is resurrection. So I have some...
Is it specific Jesus resurrection?
No.
Or just in general?
Not at all, actually.
Okay.
So, movies with the resurrection theme. Got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe seven things here. So that's what's on the docket today. So again, welcome back, and thanks for being here, and thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing. So, without further ado, Elizabeth Moss was maybe promoting The Handmaid's Tale. That's her big show right now, The Handmaid's Tale. And so, because of the nature of that show, touching on, politics and religion, she was pressed on certain things. And so, for those of you that don't know, Elizabeth Moss is a Scientologist, so good stuff there. The long and short of it is she was talking about these things, and then she was pressed on the issue of LGBTQ. And basically Elizabeth Moss says this.
In regard to Scientology, right?
In regard to, her faith.
Okay, and what it says about it.
Mm-hmm. And so the article says, Moss showed strong disagreement with the church's alleged anti-LGBTQ stance, and they are anti-LGBTQ, the Church of Scientology. And she said, it's not where I stand. She said, that is not my bag. I'm obviously a huge feminist and a huge supporter of the LGBTQ community and believe so strongly. I can't even tell you. And people being able to do what they want to do, to love who they want to love, to be the person that they want to be, whoever that is. So, the question that I have for the purposes of our show in commenting on that and just figuring out what that means and what that says is this. What do we allow ultimately to shape our worldview? And maybe a more whatever question is, what point does any religious system have, whether it be Scientology or Muslim or whatever, what point does any religious system have when you are free to operate outside of its framework? Pastor Monty says, wow.
Like, you mean specifically when you claim to be a Muslim, for instance, but then you don't claim the tenets of
exactly
Islam.
And that's across the board. Yeah, whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Scientologist, or whatever it may be, there's no shortage of religious beliefs out there. But yeah, what do we ultimately allow to shape our worldview? Because you see this more and more as a thing, as a reoccurring theme. And again, it's not just with her and Scientology, but what point what point does any religious system have when you want to operate outside of its framework and outside of its tenets and outside of what your truth claims are? Its truth claims are, rather.
That's mine.
That's your water bottle.
I'm like, there's this big water bottle on the table.
And it's yours. So, who wants to start with that? Big question, but it's a relevant one.
This is a byproduct of where we have been philosophically, not only as a country, but I mean the world has gravitated towards postmodernism.
Yeah, it's not new. On
the brink of right now the world philosophically is teetering between postmodernism and narcissism.
So for our listener, real quick, postmodernism being your truth is your truth, mine is mine. You know, there is no ultimate truth. Mm-hmm. And nihilism being everything is hopeless. So right. Continue.
Well, so with that being said, what we have, which Christianity has had this issue for some time, where people have been vocal about thinking that when they come to Christianity that they can take the moniker of being a Christian, but touch their faith as if they were a smorgasbord. Little of that. I don't like this, so I'm definitely not going to take that. And we see that leaking over into other philosophies or pseudo-theologies or theologies where people are doing the exact same thing. The problem there is that the underlying philosophy that there is no absolute truth, and for the person who feels that there is no absolute truth, I implore you to go to a 32-story building and jump off, and you'll find out how much truth there is when it comes to the end. The reality of it is that God has put into place mechanisms whereby we can clearly establish that there are truths which are not arguable, and that man is not the measure of all things, nor what do we think is the measure of all things. And so these people are self-deluded and walk a dangerous line, in my opinion.
I feel like we should have a disclaimer that Pastor Monty is not advocating for suicide. If we were a more popular show, this is where. Well, this is where you made the headlines.
On the contrary, if you advocate that there is no truth, then you will have no. That's not suicide. That's just exploring your inner self. I mean, for all you know, you could fly.
Okay. That's not the point you're making, though.
The point I'm making is very clearly that there is truth, and there are immutable laws in place put there by a sovereign God, and whether you want to receive them or reject them, they are undeniable.
So what? Why even cling to any particular one religious framework when you choose to live that way? Like, is it just self-serving at that point? Like it's like her faith in the Church of Scientology, is it just because it's self-serving to her, and it like, what's the point at that point?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately all religion is self-serving in nature, like if it's not revelatory. And that's the thing. Like, why does a person join a religion if they're not trying to make themselves a better person?
Yeah, conform themselves to it rather than...
But the thing is, if the starting point isn't her religion, but it's herself, which ultimately all religions, again, if they're not revelatory, are, what I mean by revelatory is that like the religion comes from a place outside of ourselves. Pretty much there isn't anything like that except for Christianity, just to spoil for you all. There isn't anything like that except for Christianity, because religions, if you study different worldviews, the religions have different epistemological claims. That term means like, how do I dumb that down? Or not dumb it down. How do I make it accessible? That term just basically means claims of starting points, basically. And all of them have like an understanding of, where we come from. And in pretty much everything, it's either we come from nothing, or where we come from is the same substance that everything else came from. And so your idea of yourself is either basically that you are everything that you're the same ontological substance, that you're the same basic essence as anything else. It may be above you right now, but one day you'll ascend to the same position as it, and a lot of religion is about that ascension process. Or that you are actually the same substance as the everything else, and there's no difference between you and it. So like in Hinduism, for instance, there's no difference between you and the gods. There's no difference between you and each other. There's no difference between you and nature. And it's all about understanding the lack of difference between you. So when you look at the various religions, it's either about ascension or it's about diminishing who you are. When that's the position you hold, sorry, we're getting to like a huge theological thing here, but when that's the position you hold, then the claim of truth is now arbitrary, and you can pick any religion you want to. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. Like, it makes sense that she would be what we call syncretic. She would sync herself to whatever view that she wants to, because in her mind, her starting point is her, and that's what makes sense. When your starting point is you pick and choose. That's the long and short of it. Sorry, we got kids in the building.
And that's a comfortable position to ascribe to when you have issues in your life where things are not going like you would like, or they're kind of messed up, or you're just a series of bad choices. And with Scientology, you are a series of bad choices in a previous time. And
right.
So you have engrams which are deeply subconsciously placed upon you, which have to be worked through.
It's technological Hinduism.
Yeah, that basically, yes.
I was going to say something, but I don't remember. I don't remember. Yeah, I guess let's move to the next topic. I seriously had something. You jacked it from me.
Sorry.
It's okay. That's why you're here.
Well, why do people hold the beliefs that they do? I think, like, getting down to it, the reason why people hold the beliefs they do is because they innately know that there is something more than themselves. And that's what it is. And so you can hold that belief and then still and then not want to practice that belief. The goal should be that we're cohesive, that we're a holistic person, and any religion that's worth its weight in salt should have an answer for how we can blend the two. The reason why Elizabeth Moss is, well, in her case, the reason why Elizabeth Moss is capable of going that direction and not blending the two is because in her religion, it's defined by her. I do want to point out, though, that Christianity is ripe with people who don't do that.
Sure.
And that's because, not according to their religion, but they're listening more to themselves than they are to the revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for me, if I take and sit back and ponder upon the things of life, really it boils down to a couple things, and everybody addresses these three things, whether they do it verbally and out loud or whether they just ponder it themselves. You know, where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? Those three questions permeate man's existence and drive us towards trying to address those three. And so throughout life, people are trying to answer those questions in order to find some cohesion in their life.
I remember what I was going to say, just adopting a syncretistic worldview.
Right.
Then it just becomes easier. You become like, because the world all now, you know, maybe always, not always, but the world wants to live in a peaceful state and all these different things, and not that that's bad, but like they end up compromising so many different things to get there, and so they want to have this worldview that doesn't rub with anything. It goes with whatever way the culture dictates and all these different things. So then it just becomes easier, if you know what I mean, to live that way, because you're not having conflicting whatevers with anybody.
Well, and philosophers have talked about that for a long time, that the easiest thing to do is to have faith. That's I think that's Kierkegaard, but I can't remember. Maybe it's not Kierkegaard. I can't remember which guy it is, but talked about basically that even though faith may not be rational, it is easier for us to have an irrational leap that then makes our life meaningful, because without that revelatory understanding, even if it's not one we, our life becomes meaningless. And that's where Pastor Monty's talking about jumping off a building. Mm-hmm. Anybody who understands what Nietzsche was saying, that basically life has no meaning, can draw that conclusion really easily.
I think that basically if people if people want to have a cohesive worldview, first you start with scripture, and then the next place you go from there is country music. I think that people would be better suited if they spend some time listening to country western music.
Please, no!
Appreciate you plugging that.
No!
You kept such a strong poker face when you started out. Anyways, let's move on. So Joaquin Phoenix, I hear that
What
real
is that
humming.
what is that buzz?
Yeah, there is a buzz.
Any of you? Did you guys like move your microphone a certain way? Any of you?
It's
There's a little bit of.
I don't know. Forgive us.
That's crazy.
Oof. Technical difficulties.
yeah, that's yours.
Huh. Well, continue.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Josh will try and figure it out. So Joaquin Phoenix is, probably promoting his new movie. What's the name of his movie? Mary Magdalene.
Joker?
No, not Joker. No, it's just called Mary Magdalene. So it's a movie about Jesus through the eyes of Mary Magdalene. But so he's promoting that movie right now. It's actually been done being filmed for like a couple of years. The whole Harvey Weinstein thing has prevented its release and complications with that. So sucks for them. But so he's promoting that right now, and he is referencing a scene in the movie /
in the Bible,
a part of the Bible, a part of Jesus' life, where he heals a blind man. So, and in the Gospel of John, you see Jesus heal a blind man with mud in the eyes, and then he's healed. Well, Joaquin Phoenix has this to say. I'll just read this short little paragraph from the article. An early scene in the movie required the actor to perform a miracle from John's Gospel in which Jesus healed a blind man by rubbing mud in his eyes, portrayed by a woman in the film. He says this, I knew about the scene from the Bible, but I guess I had never really considered it. When I got there, I thought, I'm not going to rub dirt in her eyes. Who the F would do that? It doesn't make any sense. That is a horrible introduction to seeing. So, Joaquin Phoenix maybe isn't necessarily doubting the miracle, but questioning the means, if that makes sense. And so the question I have for Joaquin Phoenix's issues with how Jesus did things is, are some things are some things sacred and untouchable, or should we, the viewer, be open to artist interpretation and expression even in dealing with things like recorded history? So, we believe, obviously, that the Bible is recorded history. And then, do we apply that same standard across the board, or are we right to be righteously indignant on this sort of issue? Lastly, this is a three-part question. Lastly, does this critique of Joaquin Phoenix and interpretation, does this cheapen the gospel? So, start with the first one. Are some things sacred and untouchable, or should we be open to artist interpretation, even in dealing with recorded history?
I mean, some things are definitely sacred and untouchable, but the question is, are they sacred and untouchable for artistic interpretation? And I don't think so.
So you would say no.
For artistic interpretation, no.
When it comes to artistic
if that was the case, let me give you an example. If that was the case in regard to Scripture, for instance, then there wouldn't be a harmony of the Gospels. So you look at like the Gospel records, and you look at how it is that the same events are told from 4 different perspectives, 3 of which are understood to be like synopses, telling the basic story, and then the 4th one taking a large amount of artistic interpretation in order to tell the philosophical story underneath it. So that would be the Gospel of John. These are all they have within them a human bent, right? In theology, we call that a plenary understanding of the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. That basically, like, people are allowed their artistic interpretation. It's also the reason why, even before the Bible was like completely compiled, and then was completely compiled, you had the gospel being spread, right? The gospel wasn't spread by videotape. It wasn't spread by cameras. It was spread by people who undoubtedly were telling the same story from their own viewpoint for many years before the disciples started to write down their viewpoint on it.
Yeah, like 40 something years after.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, that doesn't cheapen it. I want to be clear. Like, some people may say, okay, well, then that cheapens the message that's coming across. Well, not really. Not if you have a bunch of people who've experienced the same thing. Because if you've got a bunch of people who've experienced the same thing, then that will, having that many forms of attestation, people attesting to the events, will weed out people who are telling the wrong version of the story. So the story gets stronger and greater because it's got multiple attestation over time. But that attestation is going to have a certain flavor. And that's the same way we look at, police work, for instance. When a detective is trying to understand a story, it's like the story is going to look a little bit different. Otherwise, there's going to be interpretation to the events. Otherwise, people have planned out ahead of time what they're going to say, and then it looks sketch. So, So
you answered the first and third question.
I guess.
It does not cheapen it.
I don't think it cheapens it, but
the same central.
You do have to ask the question of whether what is being said is changing the content, because there's a difference between interpreting and then adding or taking away. So, and you got to be careful, especially if you're going to interpret the book of John, which is basically an interpretation
in itself. Yeah.
Then if you change the content, then that's a problem.
And that's the point, right? That John's gospel, it has the same meaning and the same things, but through a different lens. It's not like the, core things that are being presented in the other gospels it's now different in the Gospel of John. It's the same,
right?
And it's cohesive, but through a different lens. So why would people be people who would be indignant about this kind of thing would be Christians, right? A non-believer would not care.
Yeah,
about
generally,
this.
I'd say so. Yeah,
would not care that this interpretation is taken, why would people feel up in arms about it? Because you're gonna hear that when this movie comes out. You're gonna see that when these people go see this movie. And who knows what else the movie will present. I have my
well. I think I know. It seems incredibly gnostic.
So why would they?
I think the question is going to be whether. And I couldn't quite get it from the article either. I posted the article if you guys want to take a look. But I couldn't quite get it from the article. But the question is Joaquin Phoenix's position a moral position? If he's saying that he doesn't want to do this because he thinks that it's dumb, like God would never do that morally.
He's saying something about the character of Christ.
Right. Then he's changing the content of the story.
It has nothing to do with morality.
I'm just saying, if that's what Joaquin Phoenix is saying, like, why would somebody spit in somebody's eye? I'm not going to do that. That is changing. Rub mud that has. Yeah, that's right.
The way he interpreted it was he like spit on his hand and then rubbed the eye or something. That's his version of
like.
Jesus.
But if you're going to take that out, then you're changing the content. If you artistically want to, like, not show it or whatever, that's different.
He's obviously never made mud pies.
Okay.
I mean, or mixed bread or anything that requires liquid. I mean,
Basically speaking, Jesus took the mud off of the ground and spit into it in order to form a paste. And then it's the paste that he put on the eyes of the woman. Look,
I think Joaquin Phoenix, I think Adam's right. Joaquin Phoenix was more about the rubbing of it in the eye, the mud in the eye, right?
Maybe.
He said, I think in it he says, what sort of introduction is that to seeing? Now I have mud in my eye.
Well, maybe so, but here's the deal.
I get his humor.
When it comes to the greater things of life, philosophical, theology, contemplative, Joaquin Phoenix is not my go-to guy. We're talking about an actor here who spends his life portraying other people.
That doesn't mean that he's not qualified to speak on.
Well,
it doesn't mean that.
From my standpoint, I consider the source, and this is not, he has no other work that is available that says that he's a deep thinker.
Here's the thing.
Beyond being able to get a script and memorize lines.
Okay, we've talked about this before, and that is just completely inappropriate.
Okay, you may think it's harsh, but that's my take on
Are
it.
not meant to express
As
the
he said, it's
specific
his
views of the
take on
Lay
it.
Bible Fellowship.
Yeah.
You
That's
may
not
think
where
it's-
you want to get
You may think it's harsh, but
It's not harsh, it's just tacitly wrong.
No, it's not wrong. I'm never wrong. Well, rarely wrong.
He chose poorly.
I changed it to rarely.
Okay.
Okay, rarely.
It's tacitly wrong. The truth is that a person can be a deep thinker without having anybody acknowledge it. So that's the first thing. The second is that Joaquin Phoenix is known for taking on roles that actually require a lot of pathos. And so just the fact that he can act empathetically with a character shows that he has a deeper thought process.
No.
The third thing is that the characters that he plays and the way that he plays them are very deep in terms of they are.
I think that your artistic side, that you empathize and that you relate to where he's coming from. So he speaks to you.
No,
he doesn't speak to me.
That's fine, but I don't have confirmation.
I don't give him that much credit.
You're making a statement that doesn't. No, and then let's take into account Jim Caviezel, right? Jim Caviezel played Jesus.
Oh, my wife loves Jim Caviezel.
Yeah, well, Jim Caviezel is pretty good, but yeah, if you haven't got a chance, completely departure from his other work. But if you haven't got a chance, you should check out his show, Person of Interest. It's a great show.
Yeah.
That was produced by the Nolans, so it's actually pretty awesome. Anyway, but Jim Caviezel, he gives testimony about Christ. Are we okay with him giving testimony about Christ, or does he need to have gone to a seminary or written a theological paper?
He doesn't lay down a
Theological position? He
there's
absolutely
there's
does.
a difference between giving testimony and sharing where you're coming from and how you relate to things, and giving a analytical description of what you agree
All
with
right.
or don't agree
So
with,
I'm gonna-
what's possible or not possible.
I'm going to push back on that, and I want to push back on that for this reason. When you do that,
I think you enjoy pushing back.
that's not why. Wow.
When you do that.
Joseph Jesse is throwing flames on the fire. He says, I think someone hates actors, and I wanted to get the old man's take on Little Nas X. I'm not sure what that is. You're going to have to shoot us a link, Joe.
That's over my head, and
Yeah.
I'm the youngest of the
Shoot
group
us
here.
shoot us a link. But with that said,
Lil Nas.
what was I going to say? Oh, yeah.
Push back.
I want to push back on that because I think that when you do that, you're removing rational critique from theological statements. In other words, if I'm a Christian, I'm not making an analytical academic statement that can be held up to reason the same way that a person who's not a Christian is talking about things. And I disagree with that. Jim
Okay.
Caviezel is making a theological statement just as much as Joaquin Phoenix is making a
It's-
theological statement.
It's no different to me either.
Well, so what I would do is separate two things out. First of all, if you're a believer and you approach what is being said, then you're going to basically say that Joaquin Phoenix doesn't have any, understanding of what he's talking about. You can't. There are many people who, when I was growing up, one of the things that was going around is that one of the main reasons why people who are non-believers have difficulty with the Bible is because they're reading something which has not been written to them. And in the same way, if Joaquin Phoenix is simply approaching this as an actor and he's not a believer, then he's not going to understand the dynamics of what's taking place as God is relating to his creation man. And so he can comment on that all he wants to, but that's the beauty of the First Amendment. However, the reality of it is do I give that serious consideration? Do I personally give that consideration? No, I'm not a hater. I simply weigh whether what somebody says has validity or not and determine whether I'm going to keep it or not.
So, again, I want to push back on this.
You're welcome to.
Thanks. I want to
First Amendment right.
I want to push back on it just from the standpoint of I'm not comfortable with the implication. I think it's a problematic implication that the Bible is written specifically for the believer in the sense that it's not accessible. And I think that we have to be careful with that. And I don't think you're trying to say this, but I think the problematic implication of that is that having a meaningful understanding of what Scripture presents is akin to having a Gnostic understanding, which is that until you accept what it is, you can't have a meaningful
relationship with it.
Right.
Well, no.
That would have been my
Now
question.
you're getting into a more heavy theology where you're saying, is it possible for somebody to
I'm not saying
critically review Scripture?
That's what
who's not a believer.
So as I listen to what you're
versus
saying, that's what I hear you saying.
No. What I'm saying is that, look, when a non-believer comes to Scripture, the work of the Holy Spirit as he deals with that individual is going to be to guide them to the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the deeper things of what's implied inside of Scripture beyond that, non-believers have difficulty grasping.
Okay.
Because the work of the Holy Spirit, the whole purpose behind the revelation of God is to draw men to the understanding of the truth of Jesus Christ and that revelation. And the Holy Spirit helps people in being able to do that.
And I don't disagree with you. I just want to be clear about it. It's a really important thing because what I don't want is for somebody to walk away from our conversation thinking that basically the Bible doesn't mean anything to them because they're not a Christian. the truth of your standing with God, the truth of the inheritance to come when you do have a relationship with God, the truth of the state of man. All of these things are things that you can grasp from the Bible that are accessible. It's the deeper things, like what Pastor Monty is saying. I would liken it to not understanding a parent, right? You can't say to somebody, you could never know my dad in a meaningful sense unless you are his child. You can know my father in a meaningful sense without being his child. You can know him in all of these ways. You can even academically understand what it means to be his child if you read like my autobiography. What you won't understand is in an emotional way, and that emotional way is opened up even more once you are adopted into that process. So I just want to be careful to clarify.
Sure. So the second thing here is that this movie...
Also, a little Nas X.
Who's Nas X?
It's a country song.
Whoa.
It's a country song.
By who?
Joe Jesse posted it. It's on YouTube.
I listen to 80s and 90s.
Well, it's a Billy Ray Cyrus song.
It's this new one.
Not a big fan of Billy Ray Cyrus.
Not a big fan.
I was actually going to share this with you myself because it's awful.
Yeah, not a big fan of Billy Ray Cyrus.
It's a rapper who claims to be country, and so in order to help his cause, he gets Billy Ray to come on and feature on his track.
Well, I definitely don't like rap.
Circulating on country radio stations, but it's like you would not consider it country.
No, I probably
because
wouldn't.
There's like a hook of Billy Ray.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to we got this little thing we want to test out. And we're not going to do it right now, but maybe after the show we'll take 10 minutes and record, and we're going to do a live reaction video of Pastor Monty reacting to Lil Nas X.
That's hilarious.
And then we'll post it for you guys so you guys can see how he reacts to it.
Can we play that song? We're not making money off this podcast, right?
Well, if we do the live reaction video, then it's not
free.
Yeah, then it's not that, because it's like
we can't have a lawsuit against us in the future.
Yeah.
So sometime in the future, Pastor Monty is going to do a live reaction to Lil Nas X.
Okay. So what I was going to say, so we don't go down a rabbit hole in regard to...
Oh, let's not.
Is there is an underlying story out there perpetrated by the Gnostics and going as far back, cinematically going as far back as, Hanks and his 3 movies that he made, but the first one,
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yeah,
3 movies.
Yeah, particularly
Toy Story.
No,
he's talking about Da Vinci. He's talking about Dan Brown.
Dan Brown.
And so there is a
which was a weak movie.
Narrative.
I just want to tell you,
yes, it is weak.
The book was far better
in a number of areas.
Completely false, but far better.
Because of artistic license, but the reality of it is that there is a narrative out there, even on the History Channel. On the History Channel, I noted that there was this whole secret knowledge or secret history narrative about who Mary Magdalene really was, and the reality of it is that is an underlying theme that has been present for a number of years, trying to undermine the actual position the Scripture takes in regard to who she was, and purport the idea, which goes all the way back to, well, we first see it in popular culture, going back to the musical Jesus Christ Superstar, where you have this obscene song that talks
I don't know how to love him.
Yeah, that talks about,
I'd have to go back and listen to it. I don't know if I think it's obscene.
No, I've listened to it several. I don't like it.
It's
theologically, it sucks.
Well, if it's return, well, it sucks. It's by Helen Reddy, who Anyway,
Anyway, so my point is that this is nothing but a continuation.
me and Adam will do a live
response
reaction
to Helen
video
Reddy's.
to I Don't Know How to Love Him.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So,
thing now?
this is a common theme that has been running through our culture for some time, trying to affect people's understanding of who Jesus Christ actually was and how he affected people sexually, and that, in fact, he had some type of an illicit affair with Mary Magdalene. That is all bovine excrement.
Let's we got a call in for our trivia game.
Okay.
After this, we're gonna jump to Charlize Theron. Our trivia contestant will be against you, Josh.
Oh boy.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi. Thank you for calling in. Who's this?
Tiffany.
Hi, Tiffany. Josh, can you roll our little segment here as we transition into our trivia?
I can.
All right, hit it.
Time to play the game.
Thank you for calling in, Tiffany.
Time to play the game.
All right. So, as I said at the top of the hour, our theme this week on the podcast is resurrection in honor of Resurrection Sunday tomorrow. So, this trivia segment will be, and I encourage our listeners now and in the future. I know it seems like Joe is streaming our podcast to participate from afar, even if not officially. But our theme is resurrection, and so these will be movies with a resurrection theme. So this is how it's going to work.
Oh man.
I will read the just basic synopsis of the movie. You have to guess the movie.
And no help, Tiffany.
No looking online. No using your sort like this is just knowledge in the head. That's how it goes. Okay. So, Tiffany, as I said, you will go up against our resident pop culture enthusiast. So, here we go. First one. A man brutally murdered comes back to life as an undead avenger of his and his fiance's murder. What movie is this?
The Crow.
Bing, 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 bing. Josh was quick on the draw with The Crow. Good job. 1-0. Second. A ragtag group of Pennsylvanians barricade themselves in an old farmhouse to remain safe from a bloodthirsty, flesh-eating breed of monsters who are ravaging the east coast of the United States.
Night of the Living Dead.
Bing, 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 bing. Hang in there, Tiffany. It's still your game. Next up.
Is it?
In a dystopic and crime-ridden Detroit, a terminally wounded
RoboCop.
RoboCop. Ding, 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 ding. A terminally wounded cop returns to the force as a powerful cyborg haunted by submerged memories.
Was he really resurrected?
Not technically.
Okay.
He never really died.
Well, and let's be clear, zombies are not the same thing as resurrection. I just want to throw that out there.
Someone who's terminal, but then gets out of it, you can classify that as resurrection.
I love RoboCop, for the record.
All right.
I like it when he calls his partner Murphy.
That is 3-0. Here we go. An alien takes the form of a young widow's husband and asks her to drive him from Wisconsin to Arizona, and the government tries to stop them.
Starman?
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
4-0. At this point, I would inform our listeners that, Tiffany, you have no chance of a comeback due to the number of questions left, but we appreciate you sticking around and your good attitude.
I don't even know the movie. So
Yeah. Next up, here we go. Chris Nielsen dies in a car crash one night and then goes to heaven. Later, his widow Annie commits suicide, unable to overcome her loss. Chris descends into hell to save her.
Oh, gosh. I can't remember the name of this movie. It's a Robin Williams movie.
Cuba Gooding Jr., Robin Williams.
Oh.
I hear Tiffany's an expert at Cuba Gooding and Robin Williams. Tick, tick, tick. Josh was going for the clean sweep.
I obviously I know the movie. I just can't. I can't.
What
can't remember the name.
dreams may come?
Yeah. there
What
you
dreams may come? 2 questions left. Here we go. Tiffany, I'll give you a big hint, although something tells me that this hint might not necessarily help you. This was a remake last year. Okay. 5 medical students experiment with near-death experiences until the dark quantum...
Flatliners.
Oh,
I'm surprised you got that.
She got it.
I knew that. I watched that movie.
She got it. Flatliners. The original with Kiefer Sutherland
Julia Roberts.
and Julia Roberts.
That's right.
All right. No clean sweep. Last question.
Let's be clear. I could have got that.
I know, it's true. Last question. This one Tiffany will for sure get. An immortal Scottish swordsman must confront the last of his immortal opponent, a murderously brutal barbarian who
Even I
lusts
know
for the
that
fabled
one.
prize. Pastor Monty, go.
Outlander.
No.
Not Outlander.
No.
Close. You said it wrong.
It's not Outlander.
Farlander?
What?
What'd you say?
What did you
I
say?
don't know if it's right, but Farlander?
No.
No, come
All
on,
right,
guys.
Josh.
There
All
can
right.
be only one. The Highlander.
Oh, the Highlander.
Highlander.
Yes.
Out high. I mean,
no.
With the great Connor McLeod
Ah, yes.
of the Clan McLeod.
I
Clown
think Sean
McLeod.
Connery's in that too.
Yeah, he is.
All right.
He plays a Spaniard
Hey,
of
my
all
third
things.
cousin, 4 generations.
Ramirez. He plays Ramirez.
Resident Scotsman in the house. Tiffany, thank you for calling in. Better luck next time. Good job on Flatliners. Bye, Tiffany. What dreams may come, Josh.
I clearly knew the movie, so
All right, let's move on to Charlize Theron. This will probably take us to the end due to the nature of the topic. So Charlize Theron, this was just an article released yesterday on Cosmopolitan. Charlize Theron has 2 kids. One of them is a 3-year-old, and the other is a 7-year-old, Max. She adopted Max. For a long time, Charlize Theron believed Max to be a boy.
no, I think it's Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson.
Jackson. I'm thinking of Mad Max when talking about Charlize Theron.
Because she's Furiosa.
Furiosa. Yeah. So basically, the long and short of it is, Charlize Theron's child now identifies as a girl, despite being born a boy.
Has for the last
Few
4 years.
Yeah, a few years. The article says this. While talking to the Daily Mail, Charlize said, "Yes, I thought she was a boy too, until she looked at me when she was 3-year-old and said, 'I am not a boy.'" She then goes on to say, "So there you go. I have 2 beautiful daughters, Jackson and August," those are the names of her 2 kids, "who, just like any parent, I want to protect and I want to see thrive. They were born who they are, and exactly where in the world both of them get to find themselves as they grow up and who they want to be is not for me to decide." She goes on to say that it's not her job as a parent to tell her kids how they should identify, but to celebrate them and to love them and to make sure that they have everything they need in order to be what they want to be. Sentiment sounds nice. The question is, what are the pitfalls of the parental and philosophical stance of, quote-unquote, not telling our kids how they should identify? I have some follow-up questions as well. I'll read them, but we can break it down. What ground do we give up as parents at this point as parents when we adopt this sort of stance? And then where does the buck stop within a stance like that? And does it allow for, again, a safe and consistent and comprehensive worldview? So, what do we think? What are the pitfalls of this stance of not telling our kids how they should identify? Chaos. Yep. There's some statistics. I think Josh was going to try to pull them. I don't know if you're
I
in the
haven't had
process right
time.
now.
I'm kind of looking.
There's some statistics of this exact kind of thing, speaking to the chaos point, of parents who allow their kids to, grow up without these boundaries and these truths, again, truth, and these black and whites that exist, and how it plays out in their lives, and like the suicide rate, for example, and all these different things. So, chaos.
Yeah, there on so many levels there are different things going on. So from a theological standpoint, we go back to origins. Either you believe in evolutions, you believe in some type of evolution or some type of thing where we came out of nothingness and therefore life is whatever it evolves to be, and you are the product of that. And so your life is a reflection of that. And part of life's journey then is to try to discover who you are, or more importantly, what you are becoming. Then you look at the position of so if you believe that we are created, and that already states then that there is purpose and design behind how we are created. Even if you're an alien theorist and you believe that we were deposited here as an experiment by aliens, still you're basically purporting that there was some type of design in where we came from. So, but I'm going to err on the side of theology and say that basically speaking, at the genesis of where it is that man is, you have a choice to make, and that choice is that you believe that you're created with design and purpose, and or you believe that you come out of chaos and you're gravitating towards chaos. So all of society then is governed by how it is that you live out your underlying philosophy or theology of where you come from. And so, God in his design, if you go back to Scripture, God in his design made them male or female. So you are male or female. And then it is the point of society through parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and overall the society that you operate in, to help you learn and understand what that means to be male or female. And so that provides structure inside of how society then operates. But if you throw that out and you say that I begin in chaos, I don't know what I really am, I can self-identify to who I am. And don't get me wrong, I'm okay with self-identifying. If I got to take a leak really bad and there's only a man's bathroom, the man's bathroom is locked and occupied, and there's only a woman's bathroom available, in that moment in time,
Okay.
I might self-identify as a woman.
Wow.
But aside from that, Scripture is very clear that I don't self-identify, and I don't live in a world of chaos. And that's really what's at conflict here, is that you really have to determine either we live in a world that is structured and is put together in such a way that God reveals his design, and he addresses those three questions: why am I here? Where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? Or everything and anything is open to how it is that I'm going to live. It's very, very broad philosophical, theological, sociological discussion.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody, at least I don't think that anybody thinks that there aren't people who are uncomfortable in their skin. I think that that's true. I think that that's a sign of the fall.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I think that it's true, and I think those people need to be cared for, taking that into account. It's connecting with that and making that a part of their identity that becomes the problem. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to do with sexuality for that matter, or gender, or sex. It can deal with all sorts of things. I mean, we look at anorexia or bulimia. We're looking at essentially like mental disorders, right? Dysphoria,
Right.
the same thing applies. It's something that person is really going through. So I don't want it to diminish the fact that a person is really going through it. What I am going to diminish, though, is the idea that a child at the age of 3 is going through that.
Yeah.
Their psychology isn't developed enough. And that it's certainly not a monolithic understanding.
Meaning what?
It's not a singular understanding within the scientific community about how the mind works, and specifically in regard to identity. There are certain more vocal parts, but the majority of scientists and the majority of evidence doesn't show that people are locked, that people lock in their like identity in that regard at that age. One of the things that Joe just said is, heck, if the kids said they were a dinosaur, would that be encouraged? And I think that that's a really interesting point. So I posted this article from I posted this article from the Public Discourse, and it talks about this guy named Dr. McHugh. He was a Johns Hopkins researcher, but it talks about a whole bunch of other things. So I think it has a lot of things that it lists, and here's one of the things that it talks about. It says, noting the proliferation of transgender clinics and transgender affirming doctors across the country in recent years, the college notes, the college that it's talking about is the American College of Pediatricians. Notes, let's see, the college notes the staggering levels of persistent gender dysphoria among young patients placed on puberty blockers. And this is what it says. In a follow-up study of their first 70 pre-pubertal candidates to receive puberty suppression, DeVries and colleagues documented that all subjects eventually embraced a transgender identity and requested cross-sex hormones. This is cause for concern. Normally 80% to 95% of prepubertal youth with gender dysphoria do not persist in their gender dysphoria. So normally 80 to 95% who are taken to a doctor and are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, which is to say that they don't feel comfortable in their skin, they think they're the opposite gender, that goes away after they hit puberty. So to have 100% of prepubertal children choose cross-sex hormones suggests that the protocol itself inevitably leads the individual to identify as transgender.
Right.
There is an obvious self-fulfilling nature to encouraging a young child with gender dysphoria to socially impersonate the opposite sex and then institute pubertal suppression. Given the well-established phenomenon of neuroplasticity, the repeated behavior of impersonating the opposite sex will alter the structure and function of the child's brain in some way, potentially in a way that will make them identify and align with a child's biological sex. Well, that will make identity alignment with the child's biological sex less likely. So just to understand, basically the fact that Charlize Theron is taking a prepubescent child and encouraging them to not align with and dressing them up as a woman, essentially, will affect the neuroplasticity of the brain, will bring that child into alignment with it. And we can see that. You got to understand, I'm not talking about the fact that a person feels uncomfortable in their skin. I'm talking about the medical phenomenon and the outworking of that. There's a huge amount of damage that can be wreaked in that ideology. Your hormones go out of whack, surgery, there's irreversibility of decisions, the body is like mutilated from what it was. I don't understand how this is do no harm. And if I'm being honest, I think that it's tantamount to child abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking that it's like your child has something wrong with them, for lack of a better word. I feel like that's a crude way of saying it, but whatever. Has something wrong with them, and then to remedy that, you're giving them poison.
Well, Joe's point is really well taken. That come on, we're talking about a 3-year-old here. What if they believe they're a dinosaur? What if they believe that they're a dog or a cat or a Sasquatch or whatever. You know, are you going to encourage that as well? So it's a 3-year-old. Why, are you going to encourage them to break their potty training and go out in the backyard because they want to be a Sasquatch?
Well, I think actually that's exactly what's coming. You guys know about the gender unicorn, right?
Yes.
Yes, I've heard of it.
I will post a picture for those of you who don't know the gender unicorn. But that's what's coming. And if you look at the gender unicorn, let me post this picture to our thread so y'all can pull it up. You'll see as it defines sex and gender that under gender, it is what the gender unicorn thinks about himself, herself, whatever. And under one of those is other. Mm-hmm. And gender expression, other. Mm-hmm. And when we say other, we're talking about in reference to not male or female. We're talking to anything. You can be attracted to whatever you want to be attracted to. And that applies to your physical attraction, your emotional attraction. The only thing that is locked in theory, is sex assigned at birth, which is also not true. And that says other, but that's referring to intersex. But if you understand intersex, there is no such thing as a biological female who has functional male parts. There is such thing as a biological female who has male parts. That's true, but not functional.
So, I have a question. It was my second question. So when this topic comes up, it's rightfully so. It's always centered around like the effects on the child and stuff, right? And it's well documented stuff. But what effects does this sort of parenting style have on the parent? Like my question was, and maybe it's a broader question, but what ground is Charlize Theron and parents like her giving up as parents when they purport this sort of stance, this view? Like, are there larger ramifications in terms of maybe her authority as a parent and all these different things? Like, what's at risk for a parent?
Well, that's the reason why I said that, sociologically, what the parent is saying is that they are okay with and in fact encourage chaotic behavior, so that not only they want to operate outside of what would be the social norm, and to try to pioneer, as it were, the acceptance of a new social norm. So that's going to work its way through in a number of ways, starting at the basic family unit and operating out from there. So they're not going to want to conform at all to social convention.
Yeah, it's Ouroboros.
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's like what we always talk about.
Yeah,
it's always most effective to take it to its extreme, And, and the examples are, dark, but what happens when the kid's way of loving people and deciding who they want to be is evil? What then, Charlize Theron? Like, is that just you want to encourage them to be that person and find that beautiful? Like their way of loving people is evil. Maybe it's murderous or it's rape or it's whatever. Like, then what? Like, then there's that dissonance, right?
I mean, I think that is a possibility. I don't know if it's a probability. Maybe given like a lavish lifestyle, perhaps. But I'm more looking at it as what happens when it becomes utterly dysfunctional, and that to me is sad. I think that is.
Well, one thing
it's going to be years of heartbreak. It's going to be
one thing that happens is you break into other people's homes.
Will they call it utterly dysfunctional? Like at that point, like they'll understand it to be that, but then
no, it'll be functional for them. But it means that since there is no constraint on them or their behavior and how they act out, they'll do things which are unconventional and would be considered strange. Yesterday on the news, there was a guy in I think it was Milwaukee that
Milwaukee, Oregon.
Yeah, that broke into somebody's house. an apartment, broke into somebody's house, and undressed himself, took a shower, and then came out and started going through her clothes and putting her clothes on. And she happened to see it on her baby cam
Monitoring, yeah.
and
Oh,
called
that's crazy.
the police, and they caught him, red-handed. Well, so they caught him
Insert pun.
going through all of her things and putting all her clothes on and cross-dressing. But see, that would be the extension that people are going to gravitate towards those types of weird behaviors.
I mean, I think that that's a possibility, but I'm hopeful that that is an extreme.
Yes, we do hope it's an extreme.
I'm hopeful that it's an extreme, and I don't think that it. I think I'm right. I don't think it'll be what will be the norm. So I think that there's going to be extreme circumstances that go that way. I think when we're talking about evil, we're going to see it as evil not in the sight of man, but in the sight of God. But in terms of functionality, my guess is that it won't function. You're going to have lots of people who have to be in a constant state of welfare, whether it be, I don't necessarily mean physical welfare, but I mean their mental health will constantly having to be, just think about it from this standpoint, like a child who's going to go through that, who is transgender and is going to be encouraged to transition, is going to have to go on meds their entire life, is going to have to get, they're going to have to seek psychological help their entire life to help them deal with their gender dysphoria. So right there, you're already putting a person into this system of welfare, right? Where they're constantly having to be, to get that type of help being managed. So there's that. Then you look at the functionality. It's that child will not be able to produce an offspring. And that's really sad. And that's sad for Charlize too.
The question is,
I know that
do
she
you want that child producing an offspring?
Human beings are made without ability. So I think that you do go. That's the cultural mandate. Be fruitful.
Right.
and
I'm not
multiply.
going all Margaret Sanger on you. I'm just saying that,
Right. So there's that. And then there's the fact that their understanding of family, which is the prime and universal building block by which society is made and functions, they're not going to be able to provide the types of roles that are necessary to keep society going, at least society as we know it, the God-ordained society. So, you may be able to have some sort of... you may be able to have, with this new generation of kids, a reality that is sort of creeps along, but will it be able to be functional?
Thrive.
Will it be able to thrive, right?
Yeah.
Another way of putting it would, let's take religion out of the picture. Would it be the survival of the fittest? No. The only reason why these people would survive is because they're relying on outside forces to allow them to survive. And eventually, that burden is going to turn on them. And that's what makes me the most sad.
Society will get tired
Yeah.
of having to, having to support their
Accommodate that.
uniqueness.
Yeah, accommodate it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that makes me very sad. And it's not just like I think about Angelina Jolie's biological girl who is transitioning to a boy, Shiloh.
That's the thing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing.
I didn't know that.
I'd have to look that up. But it's like I said, I think it's tantamount to child abuse.
I agree.
I don't think it's purposeful on the parents' part. I hope it's not purposeful on the parents' part. But you're fracturing a kid's psyche, and there's just a lot. There's a lot there, and I think that you can't say that because a child has a persistent form of imaginative play, that child is supposed to be that. I think that you're in real danger of confirmation bias, which is what is shown in that one study. So, anyway, if I were you, I would do some research. The people out there. If I were you, I'd do some research. The medical field is by no means monolithic in its understanding of this, and if anything, it is normative toward classic understandings of gender in terms of the science of it. And I do think that the impetus, the responsibility, is on people who want to disrupt the normative system to prove why it is, why it needs to be disruptive. So
Right. So the place that if I were looking at this to start researching it, the place that I would start is doing research in regard to what we know is normative development in childhood development, and the studies that are out there that show how children develop in their physical being, but also their psychological development as they age, and then go from there and see what happens now when you start messing with that.
yeah, the difficulty with that is that all sorts of studies are slanted. So you kind of have to read both sides.
And that's what I'm encouraging.
Yeah. I'm just saying, again, there's not monolithic studies that are being funded. You see, the problem is that what we're dealing with is something that was normative now being questioned. So in other words, there's no studies that as far as I know, there's no studies that explore that a child must be either a boy or a girl, right? Not until recently, because you just are. And so it's the same thing as, the Bible never talks about abortion. Well, the Bible never talks about abortion because in Jewish culture, it was wrong. It was just understood to be wrong. So why do we talk about it? We just know it to be wrong. Well, it's the same thing. We understand boy and girl is right. And you go back and you look over the course of human history, that's basically the understanding. And that's the normative understanding. So you don't have to write about it against something that, has never been there. So now has never gained a majority voice. Technology allows for that. And so now we're at that point. However, there's you should look at the research of a guy named McHugh. He was John Hopkins. He was like the head of something at John Hopkins. I can't remember, but his research has been kind of silenced, but for no good reason. There's a book.
This is different than what you just shared.
No, actually,
same guy.
Well, they reference him in that. I don't think they're referencing something from DeVry University.
Oh, okay.
But obviously you can look into that, the Children's Pediatric College or something like that. You can look into their research. But there's a book I'm reading right now called When Harry Became Sally. And it's not a Christian book. It's not a theological book. It's just talking about transgenderism and all of that movement in medicine, and sort of charting like how medicine has dealt with that over the course of time. And it's pretty interesting. But yeah, it's a dangerous time because, well, it's dangerous for our children because our views as adults are being put onto our children.
Yeah. Didn't Kelsey come home with a book, or she took a picture of a book recently? It's some sort of book that's like geared towards child development and raising kids on that, and it's just it's a very aggressive agenda. And
and again,
they know that their best chance is to reach the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and again, you have the gender unicorn, which I posted, which is something that is. I don't know if it's being fully taught, at least in Portland. I don't know if it's being taught to kids, but it's being taught to teachers. I do know that. It's being taught to teachers and told to them, this is how you will explain gender and sexual identity. So go take a look at it and ask yourself if that conforms to reality. I know that here at ABF, we've had to take that into account. Never before have we had to say, this is how you need to understand gender and sexuality, because in the world, they're understanding it this way. So for us, we've had to build an apologetic method to deal with it, because in the world, they're teaching something that has just really kind of never been taught before in the public framework. And so we're having to teach our kids, this is what other people are saying, and does this conform with science? Does this conform with the Bible? and our kids are very quick to understand. Now, people will say that we're indoctrinating by saying that, and my response to that is absolutely. We are absolutely indoctrinating our children to our understanding of reality. My question for you is, who are out there who may think that that's indoctrinating the children, do you understand that your children are being indoctrinated?
Yeah, what are you indoctrinating?
Yeah, in fact, you can go
Of course,
back.
we're all indoctrinating.
Well,
our
if you
kids.
go back 20,
that's called parenting.
if you go back
Yeah.
20 and 30 years, and look at the educational system, this is the even as back as far as almost 50 years, but when you look at the homosexual community and the communities that were out there at the time, they lay down very specific plans
Well, and
as to how it is that they're going to approach this issue of indoctrination in school children.
yeah, that
And
method has been around for a long time.
They've been advancing their agenda.
Right, get teachers into schools
for
and-
many years.
But
yes.
let's also be clear about something. The transgender movement is not necessarily in line with the homosexual agenda.
No, they all have disagreements about the particulars.
In fact, a lot of the gender dysphoric advocates take a lot of issue with the homosexual agenda.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
But that
I'm not
doesn't
saying they're
mean
the
they
same.
can't-
It's still a dangerous ideology, and especially applied to children. So,
That doesn't mean that they haven't learned from each other,
Right.
however.
right.
And this is one aspect that they clearly, as you said, your children, if you have young children today in the public school system, make no mistake about it, they are being indoctrinated in very subtle ways.
Not so subtle,
and,
but yeah.
and sometimes not so subtle, and you need to be on top of it.
Yeah.
So we should wrap.
Yeah.
Josh recommended a book,
Oh, yeah, I can
When-
post a link.
When Harry Met Sally.
No, When Harry Became Sally.
No, you're thinking of the movie.
I'm thinking of the movie. When
Yeah,
Harry
you-
Became Sally. And he, that's from a non-Christian perspective, a non-theological book. If you're interested in a book from a Christian perspective and theological perspective, there's a book called Love Thy Body by Nancy Pearcey. If you want to understand better this topic of identity from a Christian worldview, so check that out. It's a really good book.
Yeah, I can't recommend that book enough.
It's a really
Love Thy Body.
Call it a really important book. That's how I keep saying it to my dad, because I keep trying to recommend it to him. He hasn't got around to it. But Love Thy Body, When Harry Became Sally. Check them out. Let's wrap it up. If you are interested in today's topics or staying relevant,
We do have programming notes.
programming notes, what we talked about before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can check out the Facebook video, the comments section. I think Josh has been posting the links as he does. Some discussion forming on there. Check that out. We want to let you guys know that we are in the process of rebranding and better establishing ourselves here at ABF. We do a number of shows, so in an effort to make things easier, we're going down to one Facebook page, so you can find these things easier, these different shows and stuff. And the Facebook page is Vigilance Radio Network.
Yeah, it's going to be a public Facebook group, the Vigilance Radio Network. You'll be able to join it. So expect an invite to it. You'll be able to join it. And instead of cross-posting all of these shows onto everybody else's...
If it's public, they need to be invited? How do you...
No, you can join it. It's just because it's public, people can find it and join it themselves.
Like subscribing.
Gotcha.
It's essentially the same thing. It's
Gotcha.
it's just a group, so there can be more discussion
Okay, yeah.
that takes place.
Yeah, so yeah, if you're interested in these things, you can go there and find these videos and find these podcasts and discuss and yeah, join us. If you are completely new to the Bible or exploring your faith, you can check or new to Christ, you can check out the help tab on our website, abfpdx.org. With that said, we have several things in the pipeline, as we always do. This month, our Upper Story podcasts, which deals with just young Christian people talking about their faith and talking about relevant things. They have their podcast called The Upper Story, and that is the last Saturday of the month, April 28th at 7 p.m.
Sunday.
Did I say Saturday?
Yeah.
Last Sunday, sorry. April 28th, 7 p.m. You would have seen that if you looked at the calendar. Sunday at 7 p.m., so join us in that. The topic, I think, is relationships. So, young Christian people talking about that and what it means.
Yeah,
and how
it's a casual discussion between young people and their youth leaders.
like Red Table Talk, but with a yellow couch instead.
Yeah.
You can check out Pastor Monty's podcast Tuesdays at 11, Truth Time with Pastor Monty. And then we have the next cross-examination panel discussion, which is a group of local pastors talking about theology in plain language. So next month would be May 26th. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say something before we close.
Okay, yeah. Next month, May 26th, the topic would be... I don't have. But look for that, May 26th next month. Again, local pastors talking theology in plain language.
It's denominations.
Denominations. And you can submit questions you might have regarding denominations with the hashtag @CrossX on the Cross Examination Facebook page. Josh wants to say something.
Yeah. Oh, well, are you pretty much ready to close up?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who supports us. Like I said, we are trying to pare down everything we have so it's much easierly accessed. But I just wanted to make a plea, a basic plea. Our ministry isn't free to us. It's free to you. So with that said, if you feel like this is a cool thing and you want to support us, like, we're going to put a donate button on our site, and we would like you to consider donating to us. If it's a ministry that is actually like doing right by you and you appreciate it,
Helps generate discussion.
It helps generate discussion, helps you understand things better. We're going to be putting a donate button on our site, and even just like $1 a month or even $1 at all is a way of letting us know that you appreciate what we're doing and helping us to fund, getting the things that we need to run this ministry, because things break down. So, that's all I wanted to say, pretty much.
Cool. So in 2 weeks, you'll find us again, episode 6. So thanks for joining, thanks for listening, and we're out.
The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of the S2EP5 Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.